Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. I am Jerome Hagape, together with Miss Holian Grace. Before we start our report, let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you for this day you've gave upon us. Thank you for this opportunity in which we can gather new vital learnings. Until this moment, may your presence, guidance, protection be showered for us as we continue acquiring learnings for this session. Glory and honor belongs to you, Lord. Our topic is all about the approaches for language art teaching. So, this is an approach that refers to general assumption about what language is and about how learning a language occurs by Richard and Rogers, 1986. In the other words, an approach to language teaching describes the nature of language, how knowledge of a language is acquired, and the conditions that promote language acquisition. First approach is the communicative approach. So, communicative approach is an approach to language teaching that makes learning to communicate central. From the word communicative, it is an approach to language teaching that makes learning more effective to the students, that they can acquire better understanding coming from the teachers. This approach is very essential for us as a future mentor for them, in which we can share our experiences where they can learn something. So, communication is essentially the rationale for language and the communicative approach. So, communication are the foundation of everything. We cannot learn without any communication. We cannot understand without any communication. And we cannot convey messages without any communication. So that's why we need to practice how to socialize others, especially for us dahil tayo ang magtuturo sa mga bata kung ano ang dapat nilang gawin upang merong matutunan. So, as a role model, you should enhance the weaknesses of that children by giving some inspiring message or thoughts, motivate them where they can enhance not only for their self-confidence but also for themselves. Seek to develop those skills that enable students to meaningfully engage with each other. Interactive activities are the hallmark of this approach. As a teacher, it is our duties and responsibilities to provide the students more opportunity in which they can boast their respective confidence. For instance, you gave them a task to go in the front to introduce themselves, share their hobbies, or what was their favorite foods, and so on. So as they go in the front, they will feel comfortable to communicate with their fellow classmates. So in that particular way, dyan natin makikita ang progress sa mga bata. Authentic materials are used every so often. Examples: audio, visual, and written. Newspapers, TV programs, magazines, internet, movies, interviews, TV commercials, animations, and radio talks. Let's proceed to the language scaffolding. Scaffolding, also known as scaffold learning, scaffold method, scaffold teaching, and instructional scaffolding, is a very popular in early childhood education. So, this method is one of the most important method for the sake of our students' learnings because it has the ability to scaffold learning, scaffold method, and instructional teaching. When using scaffolding with young children, a teacher will provide with support and guidance so that there will be progress coming from the learner. The students cannot know how to read or even to write with his or her name. Tapos, nakikita ni teacher kung gaano nakahirap ang isang estudyante niya. Hindi pa rin niya tinutulungan. So by that case, there will be no improvements na makukuha niya. Dahil nga si teacher ay walang pakialam. So dapat as a teacher, you should always be flexible for everything you do. Kung hindi marunong Ang estudyante, turuan mo, i-guide mo upang meron silang matutunan. Scaffolding is all about the support and guidance from the teacher. Bigyan natin ang mga bata ng pansin until such time na kaya na nila ang isang gawain na mag-isa. We can apply scaffolding to language development by creating a language-rich environment. Daily read aloud sessions, open-ended questions, encouragement to describe events orally and retell stories, and building on early reading concepts that each child already understands. For example, once a child recognizes a specific letter, you can teach the sound and then words that start with that sound. So, in teaching, there is always a process. First is you should teach the child to recognize specific letters before you teach them a letter sounds. Madali lang maintindihan ng isang bata kung si teacher ay alam niya kung ano ang dapat niyang gawin. Next is the cooperative learning. Cooperative learning, sometimes called collaborative learning, essentially involves students learning from each other in groups. So, example of this is group works in which they can collaborate their ideas with their classmates to create more productive outcomes. Cooperative learning is important method where the students enrich their capabilities. So as a teacher, you must undergo some interactive activities in order for them to increase their understanding. So cooperation is not only a way of learning but also a theme to communicate it about and studied. That's according to Jacob 1998. So, cooperation is not only a way of learning, instead, it is the foundation of learning where the learners could enhance their communication skills. Next is the situational language teaching oral approach. Involves accurate use of vocabulary, items, and grammar rules in order to achieve a practical mastery of the four basic skills. So, by the help of the teacher, learners must be able to produce accurate pronunciation and use of grammar. For instance, if the teacher did not pronounce well about his or her lesson or topic, then yun ang magagaya sa mga bata. So as a teacher, we need to know first before we conduct some discussion to them dahil kung ano ang mga na-relay sa ating bibig, yun din ang mga matutunan nila o yun ang mai-apply nila sa kanilang sarili. Next is the functional notional approach. Recognize language as purposeful communication. That is, we talk because we need to communicate something. So, functional notional approach recognize language as purposeful communication. It was indicated here that we talk because we need to communicate something. So that is why communication is purposeful because wherever we go, communication are still there. Multiple intelligence or multi-skill. Teachers have always known that their students have different strengths. So, as a teacher, you should always know that your students have different strength or different capacity on learning. Teachers must know his or her limitation, no? Hindi dahil lang isa kay estudyante ay hindi madaling makakatch up sa lesson, papagalitan ni teacher. So dapat, dahil teacher ka, it is your responsibilities to make some way in order for them to learn and to improve their weaknesses.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmates. I am Grace Huyan. This time, I am going to report the continuation of Mr. Jerome Hagape's report entitled The Approaches for Language Arts Teaching. So one of the approaches for language arts teaching is multiple intelligence or multi-skill. It is based on the work of Howard Gardner, 1993. It characterizes the ways in which learners are unique dealing with learner differences. Students have a various or multiple intelligences and skill. They have different learning or cognitive style. For example, some students are more better in visual learning rather than oral or auditorial learning. Data gatherers, fluent but inaccurate. Rule formers, more accurate but often speak haltingly. So students who are data gatherers are only have a responsibility to collect information, although they are fluent, but we cannot sure that the information they gathered is accurate. So role former students are the role maker, that's why they are more accurate than data gather students because they have the rules to be followed, but they often speak haltingly. Teachers who recognize the multiple intelligences of their students acknowledge that students bring with them specific and unique strengths, which are often not taken into account in classroom situations. So here are 8 distinct intelligences theorized by Howard Gardner that can be developed of students over a lifetime. So first, logical or mathematical. It is the ability to use numbers effectively, to see abstract patterns, and to reason well. For example, puzzles and games, logical, sequential presentations, classifications, and categorizations. Number 2, visual or spatial. The ability to orient oneself in the environment, to create mental images, and a sensitivity to shape, size, and color. For example, charts and grids, videos, and drawings. Number 3, body or kinesthetic. The ability to use one's body to express oneself and to solve problems. For example, is hands-on activities, field trips, and pantomime. Next is musical or rhythmic. The ability to recognize tonal patterns and a sensitivity to rhythm, pitch, and melody. For example, singing, playing, music, jazz chants. Next is interpersonal, the ability to understand another person's moods, feelings, motivations, and intentions. Example, pair work, project work, group problem solving. And number 6 is intrapersonal, the ability to understand oneself and to practice self-discipline. Example of this is self-evaluation, journal keeping, options for homework. Next is verbal or linguistic, the ability to use language effectively and creatively. For example is note-taking, storytelling, debates. And next is naturalist, the ability to relate to nature and to classify what is observed. For example, collecting objects from the natural world, learning their names and about them. So this is the first way to teach multiple intelligences through the 8 distinct multiple intelligences. And now, this is the another way or the second way to teach multiple intelligences. Perspective is to deliberate, plan lessons so that the different intelligences are represented. Here is one lesson plan adapted and expanded from Emanuela Agostini, which addresses all of the intelligences. Step 1. Give students a riddle and ask them to solve it in pairs. For example, I have eyes, but I see nothing. I have ears, but I hear nothing. I have mouth, but I cannot speak. If I am young, I stay young. If I am old, I stay old. So what am I? The answer is a person in a painting or photograph. This is the example of interpersonal, verbal, or linguistic intelligences. Step 2. Guided imagery. Tell students to close their eyes and to relax. They describe a picture of a scene or a portrait. Ask them to imagine it. Play music while you are giving the students the description. For example, this is an example of spatial, visual, or visual intelligences or musical. Step 3. Distribute to each person in a small group a written description of the same picture they have just heard described. Each description is incomplete. However, and no two in the group are quite the same. For example, one description has certain words missing. The other has different words missing. The students work together with the other members of their group to fill in the missing words so that they all end up with a complete description of the picture. So this is interpersonal or verbal linguistic intelligences. Next is ask the groups to create a W of a picture by acting out the description they have just completed. This is the example of body or kinesthetic intelligence. Step 5 is to show the students the picture. Ask them to find 5 things about it that differ from their tableau or from how they imagine the painting to look. The example of logical or mathematical intelligences. Step 6. Ask students to identify the tree in the painting. Intelligences naturalist. Step 7 is the reflection. Ask students if they have learned anything about how to look at a picture. Ask them if they have learned anything new about a target language. This is interpersonal intelligences. The point of this lesson plan is that typically, linguistic and logical mathematical intelligences are most appreciated in school. So more recently, Gardner proposes 5 minds which focus on cognitive abilities that individuals need to develop in order to be successful in a changing world. Of the 5 minds, 3 focus on intellectual development and 2 minds on character development. Disciplinary mind. It is first of the intellectual minds, which students master a traditional body of information, such as important historical developments in a particular country or countries. It is the ability to think in which students are going to master an important information about historical development in a specific countries in order for us to have an ideas. Gardner believes that it is essential for individuals in the future to be able to think in ways that characterize the major disciplines. Second is synthesizing mind. It is second of intellectual minds where the focus shifts to bringing together, organizing, understanding, and articulating information from various disciplines in a unified and coherent whole, able to select crucial information from the plenty amounts available, arraying that information in ways that make sense to self and others. For example, is comparing literature in Spanish, Arabic, and English to learn how the history of people speaking these languages has shaped literary styles. It allows professionals to scaffold their knowledge from the past into new, expanded knowledge for the future. Third is creating mind. It is where the students are encouraged to come up with new ideas, original solutions to problems, and creative questions. This could include creative writing or original historical or political analysis. It is to be able to go beyond existing knowledge and synthesis to pose new questions, offer new solutions, fashion works that stretch existing genres, or configure new ones. Respectful mind is reflected by awareness of appreciation and openness to the differences and individuality of others. This would naturally include fostering tolerance for people from other cultural backgrounds, religions, races, and identities within and beyond the classroom. The respectful mind responds understanding and constructively to differences among individuals and among groups, seeking to understand and work with those who are different, extending beyond mere tolerance and political correctness. Last is ethical mind. It encourages students to cultivate a sense of responsibility for themselves and for the well-being of others. It is able to merge rules at work and as a citizen and act consistently with those conceptualizations, striving towards good work and good citizenship. content-based instruction or CBI. It is not exclusively a language program, but instead it integrates the learning of language with the learning of some other content. This approach is not only for the process and practice of obtaining a second or foreign language, but it also integrates or combining the learning of language with the learning to other content. For example, some topics such as popular music or sport in which students are interested, but oftentimes the content is about academic matter. It is because academic subject has been observed that they provide natural content for language study. This approach offers a method to address any issues or problem about language and content learning to the teachers. It also allows students to make ongoing progress in both to ensure they are not left behind while learning the language. Task-based language. It is language is acquired through use. In other words, students acquire language they need when they need it in order to accomplish the task that has been set before them. The students need to communicate with their teachers and their co-classmates in order for them to have a knowledge or they can acquire the language they need to accomplish. Tasks are meaningful and in doing them, students need to communicate. Tasks have a clear outcome so that the teacher and students know whether or not the communication has been successful. So the teacher is the one who gives the task or activities to the students that they need to complete. Then the teacher discusses the language used to help learners develop implied knowledge of the language that will be able to for them to participate easily and naturally in communication. For example, planning a trip, hold a meeting. Next is participatory approach, also known as Freire approach, is a teaching strategy that incorporates themes or content area that are of interest to learners. The participatory approach is under the umbrella of content-based instruction or CBI, in that it uses topics for specific purposes. It is one of the teaching strategy that integrates content area or subject area that the learners find interesting. It is to empower learners to take a proactive stance in making themselves free from their burdens. When we say content-based instruction, it refers to an approach to record language teaching in which teaching is organized around the content or information that students will acquire, rather than around linguistic, the subject coming from real issues that can affect students' daily lives where language learning is used as a tool to solve social problems. A core practice of the participatory approach is problem posing. Problem posing involves the selection of real-life issues from the students' lives and engages the students in an open-ended process of problem solving. Problem posing is a method of teaching that emphasizes critical thinking for the purpose of liberation. In this method, you have to select a participant or students in real-life issues and you engage in an ending process of solving.